Well, that music can only mean one thing. It is the return of the Peterborough podcast. Hello, my name's Kev Lawrence, and I've been a radio presenter in the Peterborough area for, well, the best part of 25 years.
And I'm John Baker, and I've been a local journalist in Peterborough for not quite as long.
So, for each episode, we like to talk about the city, what's going on in our beautiful city of Peterborough. Having said that, according to some people, it's not as beautiful as we all maybe thought. We'll talk about anything to do with what's going on in and around where we all live. We'll be honest, we'll be relevant, we'll be positive. And I think we should mention that as it's the first podcast of 2024, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I hope you had a good Christmas and New Year.
Mixed, yeah.
Mixed?
Yeah. I mean, Christmas itself was fine. New Year was fine. We had friends around. Just before Christmas, me and my wife's father died. So we had a funeral to attend in Coventry last week, obviously, which put a real dampener on a lot of things. He was a great person. He was a second father to me as well, to be quite honest. He passed away from cancer and complications with that. So yeah, it's not the best way to start 2024, but we will. One of the things we'll be talking about in this show is health of Peterborough, health of people in Peterborough, particularly in the light of something I picked up in the Express, the national newspaper, the Express, about Peterborough being the unhealthiest place in Britain, apparently.
Well, we seem to top a lot of these, what I
Don't
call
we?
trivial, stupid, meaningless things to ignore polls. And I say that because Peterborough seems to be sort of the winner of a lot of them. You know, worst place to live, grimmest city, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So this is a different one, isn't it? As in unhealthiest. What have they based the results of this survey on?
Okay, so they analysed 307 districts in England, and they ranked Peterborough as the worst for health and well-being in 2023.
So it's stat based on
given
research.
a mark of 40 out of 100 based on 12 key health markers, which included air pollution levels, cancer diagnoses, and physical activity levels. And apparently, most shocking were the city's high rates of self-reported kidney and liver disease experienced by 10.5% of residents. More than half of people living in Peterborough also reported mental health conditions, 60% nearly, and 38.5% had diabetes. This is gathered by a blood testing company, Blue Horizon. And
so as much as we want to stick up for the city and be positive about where we live, you can't argue with stats. So I wonder what the key policy decision makers of this city are making of all of this.
Well, it's been a long,
it's been embarrassing, isn't it?
We've spoken about things before, like Peterborough Youth Council are trying to get rid of advertising of fatty foods and junk food across the city, or trying to limit it, particularly in council areas. I think the council does a good job of that already. We know that there's lots of work developments across the city that are trying to look into encouraging more people walking, more people cycling, more people doing physical activity. But yeah, as you say, it's not great. I mean, somebody has to finish bottom, don't they? Somebody has to. And in this study, based on data, as you say, it's us. It's the mental health conditions, 60%, nearly 59.6% to be precise. That's really high, and that's really, I mean, you would never say Peterborough is the most optimistic, sort of happy place. Unfortunately, you only need to look at any story.
But you wouldn't put us bottom.
No, I wouldn't.
And I think about all of the conversations I've had with the various mental health charities locally. CPSL Mind are an incredible organisation with loads and loads of awesome people.
Andy's Man Club and things like that.
All of that. So to kind of read that we come out top, and those levels are particularly high in comparison to similar sized cities is a worry. Because there's a lot that's being done to try and help people diagnosed with mental health issues. But across the board, what you're saying is it's a much wider kind of issue. As a city, we're not that healthy, and more needs to be done. Which is why, again, I sort of point the fingers at key decision makers in our city and push them and challenge them. Are they doing all they can?
We will in the coming weeks try to get some health experts on the show to talk to them about things like that, and let's say talking to the council. But ultimately, it is people's own decision, isn't it? Whether now some people, obviously, the people with disabilities or the elderly, etc., who cannot they cannot go out for jogs and things like that sometimes, but there are many people who choose not to, and at the moment it's cold, etc. But a lot of people will have made that New Year's resolution to cut down on sugary food, fatty food, bad food, and get out and do a bit more exercise. And in fairness to a lot of people across the city, a lot of developers, a lot of future looking people, we are trying to do things. A lot of the developments that are coming to the city do have people's well-being in mind. Let's take the £65 million project to redevelop the area around the city's railway station. So there's a master plan. It says in there that 4,000 jobs are going to be created, 700 homes built. It's hoped that the project will let the city flourish. And as you might guess, that's always quite a snarled up area around there at the moment, particularly with traffic. So public transport will be encouraged, the use of public transport, as well as improving walking and cycling links. That could have an knock-on effect on health and wellness. So we have to be looking at, we know there's a lot of controversy around ULEZ. That's more to do with fuel usage, I guess. But also it's to encourage people to walk to the local shop and to go out on their bike and do things like that. It's whether we want to do it. And as I say, we were bottom of that, but we're by no means, this is a massive thing across the West, if you like, and not just England. It's, it's America as well, and lots of European countries. So it's something that we've got to encourage.
Let me come in. So, you're saying a lot there, and I'm interested in talking about the developments, the redevelopment of the city, and I know we're going to come on to the showground in a minute.
Yeah.
I have read that same report you're talking about, the £65 million Peterborough station development. Yeah. Yes, the jobs thing is one really important point, but just seeing the city grow to be a more desirable place to go to is part of where I'm coming from with my kind of interest in it.
Yep.
But in terms of the wellness, physically and mentally, we can't look at our developers and say, oh, our future health depends on you to build the right things. And I go back actually to your point earlier, and I agree with you. As individuals, as families, we've got to take quite a lot of personal accountability for how physically well we are, and also to some degree how mentally well we are. It starts at home, all of this stuff, doesn't it? However, that said, to be able to fix ourselves, if you like, we do need the spaces to go to. We've got great cycleways around the city. We've got great areas to go walking around the city, not just the city centre but the wider area of Peterborough. And let's get to it then. You've mentioned the station development, the AEPG, East of England Agricultural Society joint plans for the showground. I mean, as I read it, and I spoke to Ashley Butterfield recently, the CEO of AEPG, it's heavily focused around physical activity and wellness for not just the people who live within all of these 1,500 new homes, but the wider city. Yes. And some of the statistics that came out of their reports, they did this big economic assessment, didn't they? Economic assessment. And there were some amazing stats that this company came out with how much healthier everybody living in our city could be with all of the investment they're going to make in physical and wellness type stuff as part of that big plan.
Yeah, it is. And we know that there's some controversies about some of the planning applications there. The main thrust of...
Do you want to talk about the controversies, or do you want to just ignore
well, the Speedway is the obvious one.
DHL and Speedway. We've not really touched too much on Speedway.
No.
I've got so much, what's the word? I don't want to use the word sympathy. But
why not?
I mean, it's bigger than sympathy. It's full understanding of the history of Speedway in this city is enormous. We've had a successful Speedway team in our city
50 odd years.
All of these years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, A, there's no team for 2024, and B, there's no hope of any home for the Panthers.
No.
And I don't know who to point fingers at for it, but I just want to say it's a massive, massive shame. We've pushed and pushed and pushed the guys from AEPG. They extended the life of the Panthers as a venue by 1 year, but said all along it's not going to go beyond that. And they've been quite firm in saying that. And just recently, when I spoke to Ashley Butterfield, he said, look, we've got sympathy for them, but there's no home here for the Panthers. All of these plans do not facilitate any home for the Panthers. So why aren't the Panthers working hard to try and find somewhere new? I keep reading about the guys from their consortium that want to buy it, but all they mention is, we want to stay at the showground, we want to stay at the showground. Why can't they spend time looking elsewhere? There must be alternative locations where a speedway team could be, surely.
You'd hope so. You would hope so.
I really hope they find one.
Because it's getting to the point where I don't want to discourage them from fighting it, etc. That's perfectly their prerogative. But in reality, it doesn't look great for the future of Speedway at the showground. And there must be other places.
The line's drawn.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen
It's
there.
no.
And my point in this conversation is to try and speak to these amazing people who've got the passion, the understanding, the will to form and lead new ownership for the Panthers. Let's get on the table, around the table, with people who've got locations where they will be welcomed.
Because
there must be places.
The report that's coming out would state definitely that it's not going to happen at the showground because it's just not economically viable there. A lot of work would need to be done to the arena itself, for example, the speedway track itself.
We're not answering our own question here. We need to get them in on a podcast soon. If anybody who's connected with the Peterborough Panthers is listening, we invite you to come and be guests on a podcast where we can get a map out and explore possible homes for a fantastic venue so that the Panthers can survive in 2025 at a new home where they are welcomed, where they can hopefully be allowed to sort of flourish and start over. Listen, that was one thing. DHL was another.
Yes.
In terms of the conversation I had with Ashley, you might add to this, but as I understand it, on January the 23rd, there's going to be another meeting that's going to say yes or no to the proposed current usage of that showground site for DHL.
Retrospective planning permission for the arena to be used by DHL temporarily for the next few years, 3 years, I believe it is.
But haven't they changed where they go in and out with these lorries
they have.
So that it impacts the residents way less?
Way less, because the initial planning application, which was turned down by the committee 2 or 3 months ago, mainly based on the access. So they've changed the access, so they will be hoping that goes through later this month. I should just say, of course, that it's going to be replaced. We haven't mentioned, for anyone who doesn't know, that there's going to be their planning for 1,500 homes and £50 million of leisure facilities as well, because AEPG would point to some of the stats within the reports that have been commissioned. Some of the benefits of the facilities could include a 75% in the level of exercise done by residents in the local area, all sorts of savings for the NHS, and green spaces and allotment, all big things.
So all achieved how? We've lost the speedway, but what's going to go in its place? Presumably state-of-the-art football pitches, presumably leisure-led, multi-use, but leisure-led activities. And I'm keen to find out more about what they are, who's going to operate them. We know there's going to be a hotel, there's going to be a care home, there's going to be this, sustainably built huge area, 1,500 homes, which I understand as well are going to have a lot of sustainable green credentials. But what can we actually do on that site that's going to help us all get healthier in our minds and physically in our bodies? And I think over time we need to push them on that to find out what that actually looks like.
And don't forget that there will be an elderly living care village nearby and also a school nearby, so we're talking multi-generational health here. But as you said, we need to push them. It's outline planning at the moment. They are applying to show that the development will work in principle. That's what they'll be trying to push towards the committee, which will be later this spring. They will be trying to say this could happen in principle. We will announce some of the big names that we want to take part in this later on, and that's when we'll find out what exactly we will get from this leisure development, I expect.
Okay, and I guess we go back to the original question. This survey that's named Peterborough as the most unhealthiest place to live, fingers crossed, if the plans for the showground go ahead and tick all the boxes they're saying they're going to tick, if the station quarter development goes ahead and again helps create a kind of lifestyle for people in and around there that is going to be a healthier lifestyle, then maybe that's kind of answering our first question.
Well, there's that. There's the climbing wall. Andrew was here as well. Ferry Meadows,
Ferry
not
Meadows
so
climbing
long
wall,
ago. We still have many other things as well. We've got something called the Great Eastern Run, which you may have heard of, which crops up every so often. Park runs. I know Ferry Meadows were saying that they're going to be doing a lot more running sessions as well, which would be good. You know, like in the evenings. And as because the park run only, you know, it's 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, people can't make that. We have lots and lots of buildings, leisure buildings across the city, but ultimately they can't force people to go there. People have got to want to go there. People have got to want to cut down on the takeaways, etc., etc., and do the best for themselves, really. Peterborough's not the only city, as I said, that's unhealthy. There are lots and lots. This is a big problem for the future, and one that really, I don't think people are really taking a lot of attention to, paying a lot of attention to at the moment. We've got, you know, we've got our cars, we've got social media now, so we don't even need to go and see anyone anywhere. There's many issues around health in our area, and we're waiting to see if people can take care of themselves.
Right, still to come, we're going to be meeting our guest. And our guest on the podcast for this episode is a PC.
Yeah, PC Jay Cullimore. He's being employed to work in the Business Improvement District in the city. So, in effect, he is a new city centre police officer.
And basically, he's been brought in to try and help with a bit of a crackdown on things like shoplifting and social behaviour. I'm really looking forward to chatting to Jay, and we'll get a take from him on what his role is and what difference he hopes to make. At the time of recording, we're recording this on the 15th of January, we've just had a weekend where Posh won a football match. They went away to Charlton, won it, and they're now second in League One. Now, depending on when you're listening to this, they may no longer be second, but Posh are flying. Okay, knocked out the FA Cup, but Darren Ferguson, what a team he is building for this season with a young squad, much younger than last year, and once again challenging for promotion, automatic or playoffs. Could the Championship becken?
I hope so.
What would you say about the Posh?
Well, I hope so. I mean, they're playing really well, aren't they? Obviously, if you'd have said a few months ago that Johnson Clark Harris might be surplus to requirement, people might have raised an eyebrow.
Well, he's nowhere near their main.
No,
is he?
No, he isn't. But you think about, you know, being one of the top scorers, one of the most prolific marksmen in lower league football over the past few years, and they've some great wins. I mean, the late win at Derby over the New Year, it was a great old turn.
Local lad,
you know,
went to school in Peterborough.
Great, and you said about the FA Cup. Well, I mean, most fans would take. I mean, I love the FA Cup, obviously, but most fans would take promotion over that, wouldn't they? And they were beaten.
Hold on a minute. What about that goal?
Well, exactly, Bamford's goal.
What about Patrick
because
Bamford's volley?
Yes, it's
top corner.
an outstanding goal, a worldie, the best goal in the tournament probably so far. But Posh, you know, they move on. Like you say, they won at Charlton.
We interrupt this conversation to let you know that John Baker was going to wear his Coventry City football shirt, but decided against it at the last minute. You should have worn it.
Well,
you're a shameless Peterborough guy now, but your team's Cov. And Cov are in the playoffs.
Yeah, we're flying as well because we're really good. Well, a Posh old boy, Matty Godden's still there. He had an excellent game
I was going to
against
ask,
Leicester
are there any Peterborough
at the
connections
weekend.
to Cov?
Yeah, of course. And Godden still, and has done a job for a long time for us now. Of course, we bought him from Posh.
Good Godden.
Good Godden, and he has been, bless him. We're playing really well, and I'm really enjoying both of my teams because Posh are unashamedly my second team, playing really well, playing expansive football. It would be great, you know, I told you what happened last summer. I don't want to go over it too much, but the playoffs were a nightmare for both of those teams. I booked the hotel and everything. Let's hope Posh do it without even having to go to Wembley this season.
If they go up automatically, that would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Given the other teams in the division, given the playing budget that Darren Ferguson is working under, given the issues with the ownership, I don't want to go into the detail of that. I think Darren McAntony's kind of once again assuming kind of total control.
I think so,
But we will see. Up the Posh.
And yes, and just one thing as well, Portsmouth, who are top, very vulnerable, lost 3-0 to Leyton Orient at home at the weekend. So, you know, they're there for the taking. Posh 1 point behind with a game in hand.
Portsmouth have a game in hand.
No.
Look again. Who's got a game in hand?
I thought Posh had a game in hand.
Look at the league table.
All right, I will do. Posh have played 26, Portsmouth have played 27.
So Posh could go top if they win their game in hand over Portsmouth.
Exactly.
I told you to look again, just to confirm it. Let's switch sports. Let's talk about ice hockey. I interviewed recently Slava Kulikov, who is the coach of...
I'm sorry?
Recently, I spoke to Slava Kulikov.
Sorry,
Switching sports. And
Yes.
Slava Kulikov is the coach of...
the Phantoms, I believe.
Yes, the Phantoms ice hockey team. They play in Breton at Planet Ice, and listen, what a lovely guy. The interview was really interesting. We talked quite a lot about the change in rules for ice hockey, given the death of a player in October last year. I mean, I don't really remember that.
Still
in the news.
ongoing, that, isn't it?
Awful story. And it meant fairly immediate rule changes regarding masks and protective equipment that players need to wear. We talked a little bit about that, but then we just got talking generally about how exciting ice hockey is as a sport.
Yep.
And anyone that's never been to Planet Ice down at Breton, go and check it out. Talk about fast-paced, really exciting sport. It's kind of like football, but with a puck on ice. There's not two halves. There's three intervals. Third, whatever they're called. I'm not the biggest fan. I have been a number of times, and I would recommend it as a family to go down to Planet Ice. It's not all that expensive. It's a brilliant sport to watch. Go Phantoms.
And it's easy, like you say, easy to understand, etc. We went to one in America a few years ago.
An ice hockey match.
The Boston Bruins.
Wow.
Yeah, it happened to be, and it was at the TD Gardens, obviously in Boston. I mean, that was 20,000 seater, and yeah, it's incredible. If I were a real American sports fan, that would be my sport. It wouldn't be the football.
Soccer.
No. Well, it would still be soccer.
Be basketball. American football.
Oh yeah, I mean, I look like a basketball player, don't I? I just look like one. You know, me being 5'1" and grotesquely out of shape. And the American football, I don't understand. I think it's a terrible sport. It's a waste of time for me.
Disagree. I really like American football, and
you're allowed
I'm
your
not
opinion.
as big a fan as I perhaps could be. It's really popular. A lot of people I know love their NFL.
Well, of course they
do.
do, because it's a sport that allows fat people to play, isn't it? And we spoke about that in the first.
Let's move away from sport. We've got our guest arriving any minute now. A couple of things we wanted to mention. I know that you're going to mention Chris Porsche and reunions. Can I just do a heads up for how brilliant Mars War and Peace is as an art installation inside our beautiful cathedral? I was shown around the installation, this big, huge suspended red planet by the Dean of the Cathedral, the very Reverend Chris Dallaston, who I really like. And I looked at the artwork and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. He joked that they're almost there on getting a collection of all of the planets, because they've had the moon, they've had the Earth, now they've got Mars. And as you look at it, you do ask yourself questions. You do, question your own place on this planet. You think about the conflicts that are going on around, well, not too far from where we are now, unfortunately. And you just ask yourself, what are we doing on this planet? Why is there so much conflict? You look at this installation, and it's mind-blowing. It's fantastic. It's free to see during the day, £3 in the evenings. It's on until the end of the month. I would urge anyone who's not yet been to the cathedral to look at this Mars art installation by Luke Durham, this artist, to go and check it out. And the thing about reunions, I'd seen bits and bobs of it. Did you go to the launch of it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and it really is something. It was a really cold night, and we were hoping lots of people would turn up. Well, they certainly did. It is 165 sets of reunion photos, so photos that were taken 30, 40 years ago, and Chris painstakingly found a lot of these sets of people who were in the original photos in and around Peterborough, and then retook the photos at the same positions, not always the same places. Sometimes they had to do them
then and picture 30 years later, recreated.
Sometimes they had to do them in different parts of the country. Sometimes even across the world and stuff. They had to get people involved because people had moved on to other countries. So I went, and it was great. And there's Nathan's done a bit of artwork for the front of Chris. So as you walk in, you see Chris with his camera. Brilliant stuff. You can go and see that at Peterborough Museum up until mid-March, I believe it is March 23rd. You can go and see this exhibition.